Okay, hello again for pdfToolbox Season 16. This is episode 2, and episode 2 will deal with new features in our brand new pdfToolbox baby. New features related to images, bleed, and we even have a switch. And now it's really going into terms. We really want to have a look into pdfToolbox. We will demonstrate the new features. From now on, every session will have live demos and everything. So very much the way you're used to it. And then let's just start. So first topic is bleed. We all know that bleeding can be very good. We need bleed, we want bleed to print files, but we often don't have bleed. And that has been an ongoing topic for us in feature development for pdfToolbox. And then we should look back what has happened in pdfToolbox 15. There, and this is the original slide that we are looking at the upper right corner. There was we introduced a new feature, how to determine bleed offset. And what is that doing is it analyzes the PDF page, and then it calculates the offset that you should use in order to create bleed. And the offset is calculated towards the trim box. So normally in a well-designed file, you would create bleed if you would need to at the edge of the trim box. But once in a while, you may have content that goes not accurately towards the trim box. So it stops slightly before. And what you would then have to do, the edge where you create the bleed should be moved slightly inwards of the trim box. And that is what this auto-determination does for you. And it also works the other way around. So if there is some bleed, but not sufficient bleed, it also detects the existing bleed and then starts bleed generation where the existing bleed ends. So that, and then of course, if somebody would look at the page and would do that manually, that person could identify where the proper edge is for bleed generation, but in an automated process, you don't have that person. The engine should identify what offset is to use, and that was happening in pdfToolbox 15 already. Now, I'm telling all of that, that is a pdfToolbox 16 introduction. I'm telling all of that because we built on that technology that we introduced in pdfToolbox 15 in our pdfToolbox 16 release. And what was possible in pdfToolbox 15 was possible to auto-determine, but if you would want to do something different, so you don't want to use the feature that is built into the create bleed at edge fix up of pdfToolbox, if you just want to measure whether there is bleed and if the bleed is sufficiently going outside of the trim box, then you now have access to that measurements, to that analysis in pdfToolbox 16. So there is a new check. The check has a title, bleed missing for page. And then it does the same what pdfToolbox 15 would do. It would render stripes alongside of the edge and would identify and would find out whether there is bleed and whether the bleed suffices to your settings. And then of course you could set up the amount of bleed that you would want to have. You have an option for facing pages, in which case the left and right amount of bleed would change, and you also have the option to exclude processing steps, objects, because that is what you normally want to do. And that I want to very briefly demonstrate to you. So I have my glasses here. It's Premiere thing that I need to wear glasses for these demonstrations. And then I have my test page here. And that test page is maybe a little ugly, but that doesn't matter, hopefully. We have a trim box here at the edge of the blue shade, blue, red and yellow shade. So, and on that side we don't have bleed. On the upper side we don't have bleed either, neither at the bottom, but on the right hand side we have some bleed. So I hope that you can see that. And then I have my new check here, bleed missing for page, and it can analyze the page and it tells me there is bleed missing, and then I can look into details here, and then it tells me in the trigger values, yeah, it does zoom, in the trigger values it tells me that there is no bleed at the top, no bleed at the bottom, no bleed at the left hand side, but on the right hand side I have exactly 4.5 points of bleed. So that is exactly what we expected. And if we look into how that has been set up, so I already showed that to you. Here I was looking for bleed on all three edges, 3 millimeters. And then there is one nice thing here too, there is a filter. So I can filter out text, which is what I would normally do in bleed generation. I don't want to consider any text because normally you wouldn't bleed text objects. So that is nice, hopefully. What else do we have? Yes, I should not do that. Okay, so, and that is what I've already mentioned. Quite importantly here, pdfToolbox doesn't just tell me whether there is an issue, it also tells me whether there is bleed, and if so, how much bleed there is. Next. The same is even possible for what we call irregular bleed. So what is irregular bleed? Irregular bleed is bleed along of a cut line, of a shape, what we call shape. And that setting it up, this check is very similar to the other one, but instead of the distance to the trim box, we use a shape definition. And that is also something that we could demo. We have another test file here, and then that is a cut line here, and I have some bleed, and it tells me in its title the amount of bleed that we have, which is 2.3 millimeters. And I have my bleed missing for a regular shape check here. I analyze the page and I've set it up, the check, to that I can specify the required bleed. And let's assume we want to have 2.4 millimeters of bleed. And then yes, I'm getting an error because I have 2.3 millimeters of bleed. And if we then say we are happy already with let's say 2.2 millimeters and checking, and then there isn't any problem. Yeah, so that works, and could also have a look into the check. So yeah, it checks whether there is bleed missing. It asks me for the amount of bleed that I'd like to have. It uses the shape definition, basically a die line, so that it checks alongside of the die line. I haven't used a filter here. I should probably have used, it's not text, but it doesn't matter for this sample file, and that's it. Yeah, so you're now able to check whether there is sufficient bleed and then could do action on it in your workflow. So, and then we also did something for bleed generation. And that is titled Automatic Bleed Method. So in bleed generation, you have basically 4 different methods to create bleed. You can mirror as an image, you can repeat the last pixel, You can mirror page objects, so not creating an image from the pages, but really mirroring the page objects, or you do stretching. And I don't want to go into detail here. You probably know them all, and you also understand that they all have their reason to exist. So sometimes you want to do pixel repetition, sometimes you want to do mirroring, and sometimes you want to do stretching. And with pdfToolbox 16, you will have even one more here, which is automatic at edges and corners. And that uses the other methods, but it decides for you which one is best. So it would use either repeat last pixel or mirror page objects or stretching. The only thing that it would never do is mirror as image. Yeah? And the other difference to the other methods, it works on a page edge basis. So up until this automatic method, the same method was used alongside of all edges on a page. Now this, in automatic, it works on each edge separately. Okay, and then there is another more tiny little thing, but still I think valuable. In repeat only, there is a filter which has a title repeat only, and there is a new entry which is called visible page content except text. So visible page content was a default. If you don't use any of your own custom filters, it would use visible page content. And now you have an additional entry, visible page content except text. Because as I've said, normally in bleed generation, you want to ignore text. And now that has become more easy in pdfToolbox 16. Up until pdfToolbox 16, you of course could have set up your own check, but now it's straight there. Yeah, and then there is a predefined profile. So this, the checks that I've just mentioned are just in the engine, and you would have to set them up yourself. This one is in a predefined profile, and once you've installed pdfToolbox 16 and use the default libraries that are coming with it, you'll have a predefined profile, which is create 5mm bleed. It's not a fix-up, it's a profile, because it has the option for facing pages too. Yeah, so you could create bleed normally or for a facing pages PDF page, a PDF file. So let's have a look at that. And we will make it easy since we just use the same PDF file that we've used before. But let's just briefly look. So again, we have our blue, red, yellow shade. So I'd say at the left-hand side, the engine should use pixel repetition. It shouldn't mirror the shade. We wanted to use pixel repetition, and we wanted to ignore the text object here. This black vector object would be a problem even if we would use mirroring, so pixel repetition would be the right. Here at the top, there is not just no bleed, it's even worse. We have the image is just reaching to the edge of the trim box, not fully. So there is a slight white line here. So if we would use whatever method we would use at the trim box, we wouldn't get proper bleed. But what we want to have an offset towards inside of the trim box. But then, because it's an image, we normally want to use mirroring. Same on the right-hand side, there is an image. So there we would also want to use mirroring. But here we want to go slightly outside of the edge of the trim box. And at the bottom, we have vector objects. And there again, we want to use pixel repetition. So let's try it out. I have, as I've said, I have here my create 5mm bleed thing. And then I want to use it in test mode. So I use the Alt key to enter test mode, and then, as I've said, it comes up with a dialog. It asks me whether the amount of bleed that I want to generate. I say 5 millimeters, click OK, and it has now done its work. So as I've said, and we can switch on page geometry boxes so that we can see what it did. So at the top, we had some white line in between trim box and the image. So I detected that. It went slightly inwards of the trim box and used mirroring. And the right-hand side, it detected the existing bleed that was there, but that was not sufficient. So it started mirroring that image on the right-hand side where it actually ended. On the bottom, it uses pixel repetition as we expected. So it didn't mirror this object. It just created new blue lines where the blue lines went through to the trim box. And on the left-hand side, it accurately uses pixel repetition, but it ignored the text. And in the corners, by the way, what it does is, for creation of the corners, it uses the same method in the triangle in between 45 degrees and the edge of the mirroring in this case, and that is where this red thing is coming from. But you would normally not use this. You see it, you only see it because we are creating 5 millimeters bleed, which is rather a lot. Yeah, and then just to demonstrate that, if I would now use the same, but it's a one page or so, it doesn't matter. But when I switch on facing pages, I now have different input fields here. I can now say outer bleed, which is outside of the area, and that inner bleed is where the facing pages touch each other. Yeah, so that is some dynamic in the dialog. We introduced these methods a few versions ago, so that is nothing. So you can create these dialogues if you want and need to in pdfToolbox as well. And that's for that. It's not, yes. Yeah, that's that. Now, images. So first, image formats and LAB. Image formats. So we all know and love or hate JPEG and TIFF files. And they are making us more or less happy for many, many years. But since recently, developments happen in imaging. We are all using smartphones all the time for creating images. And because that technology is now so important, new developments have started, and we have new image formats that are more powerful. And then specifically there's the HEIC format, high efficiency image file format, which all modern smartphones would use. And these file formats have better compression. They allow for high dynamic range, which is lighter colors. That is all possible in these new formats, but not in the old JPEG and TIFF files. It's not possible to have that in PDF either. So that is just a side note. In PDF, you can't use these new, more powerful compression algorithms or the high dynamic range images. That is just not in the specification, something that is being worked on, but it's not there yet. But what you can, of course, do, you could convert an HEIC image into a PDF file anyway. So, and let's just try to do that. I have an image here that is an HEIC image, which I have taken in my last vacation. And then if you would be interested in my last vacation, that is not what I wanted to do. I can, and I could do even more quickly if that would be my computer, but I can do that even on David's computer. I can drag my last vacation image onto pdfToolbox, and then that HEIC image is now being converted into a PDF file. And if I would want to, I could now save it as PDF, but I don't want to. So I just close it. So, and then we've demoed that. And this one, I don't have a demo for that one. We are now also supporting the LAB color space. That was not possible in pdfToolbox 15. So now in the fix-up, convert page content into image, which would create an image PDF page instead of the page that you currently have in your PDF. There you can now specify that the result image that you're creating should use the LAB color space. Same in the action where you export images from the PDF pages. So you create one image per page in your file system. There you can also specify that it should use LAB in that image, and also on command line in the save as image file format, save as image mode. All of these would only work if you use TIFF images, or in PDF, of course, in lossless compression. You can't use LAB in JPEG. So now a feature that also does something with images in PDF files. So that allows you to replace images. So background. There today are powerful solutions, image upsampling, retouching, optimization tools. Many tools are around, AI-based, not AI-based, that allow you to optimize images. And then, of course, some of these tools can also work with PDF files, optimizing or changing the images inside of a PDF file, but not all of them. And then what we thought, okay, it would be nice to be able to update these images outside of a PDF file and then put them back into the PDF file. And that is exactly what becomes possible with pdfToolbox 16. So you have two switchboard actions, two new ones in the image area, where with one you can extract images, and with the other you can replace images in the PDF file. So how does that work? I have another demo file here. No. 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 Why? Okay, I can do that. What?
It's not really the location on the touch.
Yes. Now we have it. Yeah, pdfToolbox is sometimes difficult to use, so that's why we are here. But that was not pdfToolbox, as you know. So I have a PDF file that I like because, yeah, it somehow looks nice, and it's just a 2-pager, a sample file from the pdfBT sample suite. And as I've said, here in the switchboard, in the images section, I have two new switchboard actions. One is extract, and that is what we want to use first. I could use a filter, so I could say I only want to extract images of a certain size, of a certain color space, of a certain image resolution. Maybe I only want to extract images that are not the result of transparency flattening, so I would say I want to see a certain size. But for now we say no, all images is just fine. And we just pick a folder here on the file system, and what it did now, I should have, you saw the empty folder just, so it created a file, a couple of files here with all the images that are in my original PDF file. And in addition, it created some JSON expression here that I could then open with an editor. Oh, yes. And then what I now want to do is, what it does is it creates some JSON object, and for each object there is an object key that has the value of the object number inside of the PDF file. That is the same object number that you would find in the cross-reference table of the PDF file, and the path is automatic, or the name of the image, and that relates to the images here. The path, the image names are generated with an index number and the page number. Yeah, so the page indicates from which page this image was coming from, and then the index number of that respective page. And let's now just replace the first image. So the first image with this one. Yes. So I copy the name of this HEIC file and put it into the page 1 image. Yeah, so Command V, and then I have it here. But what I have to add is, because this is one level above, I have to adjust the path to ... slash. So then the engine should find the image where it is and copy it back into the PDF file. So I think I saved it, and then I say replace, and it tells me how it works, but I already know that. I pick my JSON file, open it, and let it run. And now in Big Sur we have the image that I have taken in my last vacation, which indeed was south of Berlin, at least. It was Austria. Yeah?
We have two questions.
Yes, please.
First one related to the HEIC format. What format will pdfToolbox use for conversion to be usable in PDF?
Probably it's TIFF, so lossless compression. I always forget the name inside of PDF. So we can save the result file here and just have a look. Result, save. And this is, I've just converted this file, so that was original an HEIC file. And if I click on it, it's flat decode, yeah. It's zip, so that would correspond to TIFF. So it's useless compression, not useless, lossless. Compression is always useful.
And the other one, is there also support for the WebP image format?
No. No, that was, yeah, no, it's not. Yes, it's a question, we discussed it, but it's not that much around. You would rather not see it on smartphones, but it's a good question, actually. If there really is interest, then that could be something that would be possible in a future version, definitely. Yeah. So you know where to find us, for instance, by email, or if you are lucky, also at one of our PDF camps. And then yeah, Yeah, and that also, and that goes along with the question that we've just heard. So also for image extraction, we will always create TIFF images. So the engine, when you extract images, will also always create TIFF, because for two reasons. If we would create JPEG, you could have recompression artifacts, because you would have to decompress, compress it again when you save to the disk, and then do the same recompress and compress again when you enter it or save it back into the PDF file. So TIFF is much better there. And even more important, inside of the PDF file, there could be ICC profiles attached to the image, or masks even. And if you want to keep the appearance in the PDF file, you'd want to have these additional objects exported together with the image. And that doesn't work with JPEG, it only works with TIFF. Yeah, and then of course the whole thing, I mean, you can do that interactively in the switchboard, and it's fun and maybe nice, but normally you would want to do that in automation. And then you could use the new modify images parameter in pdfToolbox CLI, or you use a tool which is called switch. And once again, the chief evangelist takes over. And now we have episode 2 of pdfToolbox 16.
Okay. So let's talk about Switch. I have some knowledge about Switch, so let's see what we can do with that. So first of all, and I will get back to what Dietrich was just talking about, but I want to talk about some other stuff first. First of all, there is a new version of the pdfToolbox apps coming. I hoped to be able to say that it was live on the App Store, but there were some shenanigans, and so it will be available soon. The version that you have now still uses classic Switch scripting, so it's already an app, but it still uses the classic scripting environment. The new version is fully based on Node.js. That probably doesn't make that much difference for you, other than the fact that it is probably faster. The Node.js scripting environment in Switch is much faster than the classic environment, so that is always helpful. What is more important is that, of course, with pdfToolbox 16, there is also new functionality that you would want to use in Switch, and all of that pdfToolbox 16 functionality has been added to the new apps. So that is important. If you would be interested in the modify images command that Dietrich was just talking about, then that is now available in the pdfToolbox Actions app. What may also be helpful is that the pdfToolbox 16 functionality was not the only one that was missing. There were a number of requests from people to add additional parameters or properties based on pdfToolbox 15 and before functionality. So there were some things that were missing in the apps in general, and those have also been added. They have not all been added. There are some requests that are so specific and that can easily be added using this additional command line parameter property that you have in the apps, that we decided to not complicate the properties even more with these functionalities. But the advice would there be the current workaround, which is add the command line properties to the additional command line properties, command line parameters property. It's difficult. But most of the ones that we think are going to make sense for people, or those that would be really difficult by using that property, I will know I will no longer name now. Most of these have been added to the apps. So once you see them, you will have some new possibilities there as well. And as said, it will be available soon. I can't answer how soon. It also depends a little bit on the Enfocus team and how soon they then put it online. What you should know, and that is something that you will see and that might require some planning and some changes to switch flows, is that right now there are 5 apps. You have profiles, actions, compare, and then convert colors and impose. In the set of new apps that will be released, you only have 3. 2 of them are missing. Now, let me go back just for a second. The Convert Colors app should not really come as a surprise. We already said a long time ago that it was going to disappear. It is based on old functionality. All of the color conversion capabilities are very easy to integrate into profiles and process plans. So hopefully you have already converted that app into the Profiles app instead. Yeah? If you go to the Enfocus App Store, you'll see that it is marked as deprecated there as well. So that one is no longer available, and that was expected. The other one that is no longer available is the Impose app, and that is a more significant change. The reason for that is that the functionality that the Impose app gave you is now merged into pdfToolbox Actions, where probably it should have been from the very beginning. It is an action just as save as image and modify images and all of the other things. Yeah? So if you have a flow where you use this Impose app, you could for now continue to use the old version of the app, but it would be preferable that you go through, well, that you have a transition and you change it to Actions.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
Will the new app have full backward compatibility with the old apps or sit alongside them?
Full backward compatibility in the sense that it can do everything that the old app does? Yes. So it's a replacement. Yeah. It is probably a very bad idea to use both of them, and I don't even think you can. It's really a replacement of the old app. So if you're currently using Profiles, you should be able to just upgrade, and that will continue to work.
In the sense the flows will still work?
Yes, normally yes. Yes, we have limited availability to test that with a real app, because it's only a real app once it has been released by Enfocus, but that certainly was the intention, yes. Yeah, so that should work. With the exception of what I just said, of course, if you are today using Impose, then you will have to go through a transition, and preferably you would then change and use the Actions app from now. And of course, that could be a little bit of work. The reason for this change is quite obvious. Creating apps and maintaining them is a lot of work, and it's easier to have only one app to maintain than to have 5. So now we will have 3 instead of 5. The other thing, and you probably already saw it on the slide, this is a very long-standing request. So Switch has the annoying feature that it uses, sometimes annoying, it makes a lot of sense, but it has the annoying feature that it renames files as they are going through a flow, and in pdfToolbox that meant that sometimes that unique ID was visible, and the easiest way to have the problem was that you did pre-flight and then you generated a pre-flight report. And in these pre-flight reports, you didn't have the name penguins.pdf that was mentioned, but you had that name preceded with the switch ID. And we had lots of complaints about that over the years. Unfortunately, it was not such an easy thing to change, because there are all kinds of dependencies and these things were used by people. You don't want to break flows that people have built. But the new apps have an additional property called hide unique switch ID, and that, together with behind the scenes an extra parameter in the command line version of pdfToolbox, makes sure that you can resolve that problem. So if you're running pre-flight and you're using one of the built-in pre-flight report templates, for example, you can switch this on, and when you do so, the unique ID will not be visible in the pre-flight report. And that works for the Profiles app. It also works for the Actions app, and the effect is visible in a number of different places. However, it is switched off by default because otherwise we potentially could break some flows that people have built. If you have a custom report template and you already adjusted your template so that you hide the unique ID and now we also hide the unique ID, then that could break things and you could end up with very strange pre-flight reports. And we didn't want to do that, so the hide unique switch ID property is there and it is by default set to no. And if you want to fix that, then you will have to switch it to yes. Yeah, and then you'll get the effect that you are looking for. There are a few other cases where the unique ID was annoying. For example, when you create when there is an output folder created that has a bunch of images in it, using save as image, for example. So there were some other cases where this plays. It's not just for pre-flight reports, but pre-flight reports was definitely one of the more visible places where this caused havoc. And so you should now be able to fix that. Of course, if you want to try that, you have to wait until the new apps are available. It's not sufficient to have pdfToolbox 16. You will also need to have the new app. And then we come back to this modify images command. So the fact that using pdfToolbox 16, you can replace images in PDF files. And in the new Actions app, and I will show you a short demo in a second, that will hopefully work, you have a new action that is called modify images, so very similar to what you have on the command line side. That has two different modes in which it can work, one called extract images and the other one is replace images. That corresponds again to what Dietrich has shown on the switchboard or what you have on the CLI side. And then this image filter that allows you to specify a pre-flight profile that has a check that filters on images. And so this would then allow you to say, I only want to replace, I don't know, images that are larger than 20 pixels and that are RGB or whatever fits the bill in your particular workflow. So, and I think that is also the last thing I have in this presentation. Let's see. Dietrich offended my laptop, so I'm not sure it is now going to be happy to cooperate with us. Let me do something else first, and that is, let's look at a file. So this is the file that I'm going to use. And so it is just a file with penguins. That was to be expected. And you can see that they are nice and colorful, two-page file with a bunch of images in there. That's what we're going to use in this workflow. And now I want to look at switch, and I'll explain what happens. This looks very complicated, but it really is not. So I'm of course using Buggy here that will pick up that file that we looked at and it will put it in the input folder. And then you have this new version of the app. I'm using it as a script because the app hasn't been published yet. But you have this thing here, and if I look at the properties for that, then here, So the properties here is the action is modify images, as I said, in the mode extract images, and then the image filter is blank, which means no filtering. I want to extract all of the images out of the PDF. And then I do some things that are necessary in Switch. So the extract images will give me a folder. In that folder are all of the images that are extracted and is the JSON file that Dietrich showed you as well. So that comes into the output of that action, and it is in a folder. And then I use Switch to ungroup that folder. Actually, the output folder also has the original PDF because that is something that I typically also need again. The JSON and the PDF are sent in one direction in this flow, and then all of the images are sent in the other direction and go here. And I have a locally running version of Photoshop for this demo that runs some very silly default action in Photoshop. And then there is some administrative work. I didn't want to write a bunch of scripts to do something with this JSON file, and Photoshop has changes the extension of what gets saved from TIFF with 2 Fs to TIFF with 1 F or something stupid like that. So I'm renaming that in Switch. Luckily, that is easy. And then I reassemble that folder so that I have all the images and the JSON and the PDF again in one location. And that folder goes back to pdfToolbox that now uses the replace mode for modify images, and then generates an output. And now I can activate this, and then stuff happens with Photoshop, as you can see. And then hopefully that means that something happens. Yeah, it was probably faster than I would have expected, which is usually the case with Switch. And so when I look in this output folder and we open that, you now have the same file, but all of the images have been processed with the Photoshop action that gives us this much nicer version, obviously. So I'm doing this demo flow with a local version of Photoshop. Obviously, this is just a demonstration that I'm doing. What you would probably do, what you could do, what I expect some of you to do for sure, is I could replace this integration with Photoshop in the flow with something that sends the images to, I don't know, an API that uses AI optimization or upsampling algorithms or whatever you want to do with those images, and then does the same thing and replaces them back into the original PDF file.
Question?
Mm-hmm.
If replaced image is not the same pixel size as the original, will it be replaced one by one or stretched?
Stretched. What?
I think it's one by one.
No, the image is replaced. So it has a different pixel size. The image is, so what happens in the PDF is you have images are resources, and typically in the PDF specification says that images are rendered in a 1 by 1 square, whatever that means. And then on the page where they are used, they are stretched. They are scaled up to the size that you want them to be on the page. So what happens here is that we're going to replace the image resource, but we don't touch what happens on the page. So if you have twice as many pixels in your replacement image, then on the page where it is used, you will see that the resolution will be twice as high. I think that's how it works. So that should work. What of course could give you strange results is if the form factor of the images is no longer the same. So if you change the ratio between width and height of images, which would be strange, but you could, then that could give you strange results, because yeah, you're using an image that has different dimensions but the space on the page is still the same. But so let's say that you want to use an AI that does upsampling, then that would absolutely work.
There's more comment maybe. I see problems with flattened PDFs. There are hundreds of exported images, especially when they're in Photoshop actions on images from such PDFs.
Yes. And the only right answer is you shouldn't flatten PDF files. So, but yes, of course, this will not work for some PDF files, because if you have flattening where you once had an image, but now it has been split up into all kinds of different parts, and some of these images may contain flattened text or line art elements, then that will be more difficult. You can, of course, use the filter to filter out certain images, but the question then is whether that would give you good enough results. Yeah. By itself, that's not a strange technique. If you look at the image resolution checks in all of the Gantour group profiles, for example, then they only give errors on images that are larger than 16 by 16 pixels. And the reason for that is because that filters out a lot of these artifact images that transparency flattening creates. And so, of course, you could do the same here. That's why there is this filter option that lets you choose which images you want to export. Yeah, more questions?
One is typing. Long-term feature request, check for flattened PDFs.
Yes. Well, you could look for small images and then decide that it is flattened. But yes, it's not a guaranteed way to detect them. That is correct. But the method that I just mentioned, the fact that you can filter on image dimensions, or you could even run a check and look whether you have a bunch of images that are, for example, 1 pixel wide, is actually a pretty good determination of whether the PDF could have been flattened in the past or not. Yeah. Once more, this is only a demo, right? So I relatively quickly built a switch flow that shows something with Photoshop. I don't think this is what you would do in production necessarily. And of course, you could say, oh, but why didn't you integrate with AI-based image optimization tool A, B, or C? Well, exactly because there is tool A, B, or C, and then 15 million others. And so which one do you want us to integrate with? Here, with this functionality, you have work to do. You would have to build it into a production flow, but at least you have the liberty to use exactly the functionality that you want to use. It's all about choices. So let me go back to here. But I hope that even though it's only a demo, at least it shows how powerful the functionality by itself is and what options it gives you.